Are we live?
Yep.
All righty. Welcome back, everyone, to Let's Get Real with Money and Mindset. We have Michelle here and Cheyenne from Inspiring Solutions for You, and Michelle's from Connecting Mamas. So she is helping me with my children problems today. And it goes right along with her topic of her summit that's coming up on Monday. So be sure to register below to learn more about that. So today on our conversation, we were talking about how trying to encourage my son to go get his first job. There's been things that have happened in his little world that makes him really skeptical about that experience, and it's really holding him back. And so we were kind of talking about some solutions and options and mindset, what brings up a really good point. Even for us adults, we come into this problem. And so that's where we got our topic of the day, the chicken or the egg, what comes first. It kind of goes with the your belief. Is it the taking the action, or is it your belief that comes first? Michelle, fill us in on your thoughts.
Well, I was thinking about that because we think we need to be in the spot to be inspired to do these things, right? Like, oh, well, I don't feel motivated. I don't feel like, I'm going to wait for that motivation to come. The problem is the inspiration and the momentum comes from the action taking. So, as I was saying for your son, it's like that first step of him researching or figuring out one job that he would like to apply for. Because when we start taking those first actions, small actions, we're not talking about, and that's the other thing that stops us. So we think we need these monumental actions. Like if you want to write a book, I need to write an entire chapter today. No, I need to take the first step and say, well, maybe I just need to make a list for what would it take to write a book, or what do I need to research to write a book, and taking that first action to start that momentum down that, which changes the mindset. Because once you start taking the action, then your mind's like, hey, I can actually do these things, and I keep moving forward, which is why it comes down to the chicken or egg. Do I need to be completely inspired to do these things? No, I need to take that first small step and say, yes, give yourself that pat on the back and say, I did it, because it's that action taking that's going to keep moving forward. And we keep thinking, oh, well, the results matter. Let's get that out of our head, because the results don't matter. It's taking that momentum and giving ourselves that credit for taking the action. The results will come regardless. And then we make new decisions based on the results to take the next action. But it's taking that action that is going to be key to the mindset shift.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Completely agree. It's kind of like having that mindset shift on your business. Say you have to make a whole bunch of calls, but you're like, oh, I don't know the script. This doesn't seem very good. But actually, you get better at the script or your process the more you do it by making the phone calls. And yes, you want to make the sale, but you're never going to make the sale if you're still sitting on the process of doing the script. And then you're going to
Exactly.
lose the purpose. You're like, oh, it's just not working. Well, if you're not taking the action, of course it's not going to work. And then, but on the other hand, your belief is going to get stronger and stronger the more action you take. So it's how do you make that connection with your kids, realizing that maybe you have to grow too, so you can encourage them, because it's scary for them. You know, he's starting out on his first job and he hasn't had the experiences you have. He struggles with finding his purpose sometimes, and don't we all, right? you know, we're like,
Yes.
and helping him understand that getting the job, taking the action will give him that purpose, that drive to recognize that yes, he wants to do this thing, that's what he wants to do, but to do that he needs tools, he needs supplies. And so it's encouraging him to, well, first you need to get the job that can pay you the income so you can buy the supplies so that you can make other income with this project, and helping him understand that. But I find that, I think, even as adults, we struggle with that in many different areas. We try to put that egg first. We want to have the results. We want to see the results. Well, sometimes those results, like you said, are really small, and it's helping recognize that it's those little steps. Oftentimes we talk to a coach or we talk to someone that's super successful, and we see the success, we see the results, right? And then we think, oh, we need to do that. And then we get into the reality of it and realize, oh, it's like a million little steps that got them there. You don't see the behind the door approach. You don't see the hours they put into themselves and learning. And so How do you suggest, Michelle, that we really help encourage our kids to recognize that it's these little processes that get them to their results at the end, but you have to have those processes and take those steps, recognizing and celebrating those little wins, even for your kids. Remember, if they take that first step of, great, you called a couple places that you could possibly work. Great job for taking that initiative. Because I'm always talking to my kids, you need to advocate for yourself because no one else will. I can do so much, but you have to make that initiative and the rest will follow. So what are your suggestions when you're working with moms to make that connection and help those kids and have that communication? um, you were mentioning, cultivating that genuine connection with your kids. How do you do that and help your moms do that?
Well, the first thing that came to mind as you were talking was actually a book that I've been reading with my kids called Fantastic Failures. And it's really changing that mindset on the word failure in general as well. I even think back to Sarah Blakely, who she would talk about how her dad would ask her at the table every night, "What did you fail at today?" And if she didn't have a good story, like he'd be disappointed. Because when we cultivate something new, and I think when we talk about that with our kids, it's like, well, when you first rode your bike, did you ever fall down? Did you ever do these things? Like every time you learn something new, there's going to be a learning curve to it. You're going to have to take steps to learn that, right? And so the more
Right.
that we encourage that, and we encourage them to take that first step in whatever they're curious about, because again, it comes back to that curiosity and what they're interested in. Looking at those things is because you're talking about your son with woodworking and things that he wants to do. So it's like cultivating that curiosity in them and saying, well, if you really enjoy this, and then you should be going down that route of stuff you can do outdoors. You don't have to work in a hamburger stand and be indoors if that's not what you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And encouraging that curiosity from them and then cultivating that. But again, it comes back to that wording that we use with our kids. So we've been reading with the girls, Liam leaves earlier. We used to read that with him too, but we would just read a chapter a day, but it talks about some of, like you said, some of those famous people, but how did they actually get there? What were the steps it took them to get there? And there was actually one in there about Kid President, who's actually much grown now, but we start watching the YouTube videos of him every morning now because of it. But looking at the steps it took, I mean, his bones kept breaking, and by the age of 9, probably had so many surgeries and things for all the what he has. And we don't see that. We just see this kid on TV like doing all these fun stuff, and that's the results, right? As you were talking about
Mm-hmm.
your son also saying that we see all these young people, entrepreneurs these days, and influencers and things on the show, but what did it take to get there? And that's the part that we don't miss. And so we need to look more at those stories. And that's why I love the
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic Failures, is because we're looking at the overall picture. Then you ask yourself, am I willing to do all those steps? Is that something I want to do?
Right.
Or the other thing is we have that comparison thinking, oh, well, they have it so much easier. They have all these things. Rather than that thought, you're inspired by what that person has. Use that curiosity and go ask them questions to how they got there. Or maybe, and in that conversation, they end up being your mentor or directing you
Mm-hmm.
someone who could be your mentor. Because when you have someone who's already been there and went through all those mistakes, okay, because there were, let's be honest, we're human. There's going to be mistakes involved. There's going to be failure involved. We just don't want to
Right.
admit it.
Right.
Then you get cut through some of that. And that's why with personal development, it's wonderful to actually find someone who inspires you and learn their route, because it does take some of the learning curve out. You're still going to have your own mistakes. I mean, granted, but it's going to
Right.
cut that down. And so that's what it comes down to, is find the right person who you want to be, who actually inspires you, and listening to your gut and going out there and saying, yes, this person can help me. This is something that I can do. Then taking that action. Because you know what, there's a lot of shelf help out there, right? We have all our books and stuff sitting right here, but
Yeah.
if they're on the shelf and we're not taking any actions in those books, it does us absolutely no good. Which comes back to the chicken and the egg, is we need to learn what those actions are, but then we have to take them, and those
Right.
imperfect actions. I mean, granted, right now we were even talking about this broadcast right now. My StreamYard keeps messing up and stuff. And I'm like, well, am I gonna let that stop me, or am I just gonna go with it and get out there? Like, it's not
Right.
perfect. You can see my background keeps going fuzzy. StreamYard just doesn't like me today. But that's okay. because you're
Yep.
listening to my voice right now. And that's what's important. And it's getting
Yep.
past that. And the more we do this, we're going to work out the kinks. We researched and we're like, oh, I need to like look at the video card, or I need to do this. But it didn't stop us. And
Right.
that's what it comes down to, is that action taking is going to cause the momentum to keep going.
Right. Right. Absolutely. And I really like the analogy that Tony Robbins uses about a kid with walking. When your kid is starting to walk and they fail and fail and fail and fall and fall and fall, you don't say, he's not going to be a walker. You never say that. So why do we find ourselves doing it to ourselves, and why do we do it to our kids when they're older? Let them fail.
Yes.
School wants you to pass with the A grade. It's not always about the A grade. It's how did you get there? How did you get the grade? What effort did you put in to get where you want to be? And I think we find ourselves trying to find that perfect solution. And I remember as a kid trying to study and go, what else can I do to help me retain this information better?
Right.
I always led with that curious mindset. And, to be honest, I found that, listening to piano music when I was studying helped distract part of my thinking brain and retain things better. And um, there were just certain things that I've used that helps me retain better, because if I was just trying to read that one thing, my brain would take a vacation and be like, oh, this is boring. But if I was occupied with something monotonous like the piano, not monotonous, I love piano music, but where it was kind of that distraction, it helped me hone in on that, because and it helped me focus better than just trying to read the words and falling asleep on my book, right? And
Exactly.
so that's where I think we just need to encourage, like, everybody learns differently, and find that way. So what that they fall down? So what that they fail at class? Okay, so now you have summer school. Okay,
So
you
let's
chose
let's
not to take perfect action, so now we're going to do something different.
but let's reword that we're looking at, you tried, you put that effort out and you do that, and like
Mhm.
let's rework it so that, like, even if we do call it failure, but let's rethink what failure means. It's a stepping
Mhm.
stone, it's a learning process. And the more we as parents tell our kids, like, it's okay to fail, it's okay to make
Right.
mistakes, what's not okay is not to learn from it. that's
Absolutely.
that's what
Absolutely.
we just need to work on. It's like,
Yep.
you're going to make mistakes,
Yep.
but are you going to keep repeating the same mistake over and over? And that's when we have problems, right? So
Right.
we pause there and say, well, what can we do to let's do something different then if we keep seeing the same one over and over. But
Right.
failure itself is not, but we have that idea in our head that we have to be perfect and we have to do this right the first
Right.
time.
Right.
And then when we don't do it right the first time because we're learning something new, then we stop.
Right. And
And
that brings up
so,
when my youngest would, when he was working in school, and he would fail or not get a perfect 100% on his score on the first test in a new lesson. Like, dude, this is the first time you learned this process. It's okay not to get 100%, but he would get so hard on himself. It's like, it's okay. You took action. You got a really good grade. Like, you understood most of it. So you missed a little bit. That's okay. But they're so driven to try getting that perfect score right out the gate. It was like, that's part of school. You're learning. That's why you go to school. It's like, it's okay.
but
Seriously.
I love how, like, as you give that example, I can feel the pressure mounting up in your child. And that's what we're doing to our kids, is we're putting this pressure on them for perfection at such an early age. It's set up to be, answer the question, get the answer right, or get that red mark on your paper. Things are slowly starting to change, but it starts with us at home.
Mm-hmm.
And whether you homeschool or whatever your education system, it starts with that conversation of let's redefine failure. It's a stepping stone.
Right.
It's a thing
Right.
to say, okay, this didn't go well. What's our next step? Let's
Right.
keep moving forward, and readjusting. But if we sit there, and I'll even give this example of my son, who was, we were trying to go figure out, it was last summer, we were trying to figure out, are we going to go see Christmas lights or not, right? He was so paralyzed that he could not make the decision of what he wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I sat with him in the hallway for 45 minutes. And I'm like, I'm not going to decide for you. I'm sitting here with you until you decide. After 45 minutes, he finally made a decision. But it comes to the point that if we don't give him that space to start being decisive and make decisions, we get stuck in like, well, I'm not going to make the right choice. I'm not going to make the right choice. But if I don't make a choice at all, I'm just stuck here feeling anxious and anxiety
Right.
and saying, I don't know what to do. But if I just, even if I chose the wrong one or the right two, when I get to that wrong result, I'm like, okay, well, now I can
Right.
readjust.
And
But
it
I
can
can't do it if I don't take a step.
absolutely. And it can start with something as simple as giving them options for what's on their sandwich. I
Right.
had we had a kid over one time, and he was kind of had that paralyzed thought. As far as I was asking him what he wanted on his sandwich, he's like, I don't know, my mom just makes them for me. He didn't know whether he liked mustard or mayo or anything on his sandwich. I was like, man, it really can start with those little decisions and encouraging him. Okay, so you put mustard on today, and you're like, ooh, that was gross. Okay, you don't have mustard tomorrow. But you have to give them that flexibility to make those decisions. And I get, we want them to try new things. Give them the opportunity to try it. Here, try a bite of mine if it has the mustard on it. Do you
Yeah.
like that flavor or not? Let them find, not that they need to be picky, but help them make those decisions, not just saying, I don't want it and they've never tried it. Have them try it and then make a decision. Do you like that or not? And, even they're going to have failures. I let my kids experiment in the kitchen. My youngest likes to follow recipes, and my oldest loves to just make the most different combinations that I would have never thought of. And his famous is he has these bagels that he makes that are so creative. He finds stuff out of the fridge and combines it with like a meat, cream cheese, and seasonings or hash browns, like things I would have never thought to put on a bagel. And they're amazing. Like they are so stinking ooey gooey good. But it's allowing him to find those because yeah, he's had some where that was a little salty or that had a little bit too much hot sauce. But it's allowing him to learn through the process. And I think we get so stuck on trying to help them make the decisions. Like you said, they need to make those decisions. Now, my youngest, he struggles with some of those decisions. What do you want? Well, I don't know. And then they get frustrated because they don't want what you make. It's like, I gave you options. You chose not to make a decision. So this is what we have. And, giving them that ability to do that because it's only going to build them more for their future.
Well, I think you just segued perfectly into what I need to end with, which
Yeah.
is that on Monday I'll be speaking in a summit of over 100 speakers geared towards parents. But what I wanted to bring up was you brought up the kitchen, and my son, my 12-year-old son, is actually going to be a speaker on the summit as well.
How
And
exciting.
it'll be his first time speaking. I'm actually, that feeling like a little bit nervous but he's trying and he's working so hard at it. And I'm like, you know what? He's so straight and narrow. And I was like, it doesn't matter how it goes. You are doing this and you are making this happen and you're making a decision. And he actually, his passion is teaching other kids how to cook. And so
That's
you brought up the
amazing.
kitchen. And so if I remember correctly, his talk title, which I put it in the comments, is about a middle schooler's perspective on how to eat healthier. And so I love that we're bringing in these perspectives. And again, it's opening these doors to our kids. It's giving them
Mhm.
options. Now, my daughter had spoken another summit. My 9-year-old had spoken for her first time on a summit, and she was offered a chance to speak on the summit too. And she chose not to. It was just too much for her in the day that it was happening. And so that's okay. But it's presenting these opportunities to our kids and opening these doors and let them decide, making decisions on what they want to do and not do.
Mhm.
And it was funny. That's what inspired my son so much to do it, is that my daughter got to speak on the other one. And it was for Women's Day. So he had no choice, but he couldn't speak on it because they're only allowing women to speak on it. So he was very angry about it. So he was very adamant. I am speaking in the next summit. I get an opportunity to do so. And so I go, here's
Yeah.
your opportunity, bud. So that actually will be coming this Monday. It's all day long from 8 a.m. PST to 6 p.m. PST. And my son's talk will be at 3 p.m. PST. And I believe mine is at 4:30 PST time. But I will be hosting a whole
Awesome.
track, be on there all day. And there'll just be so much goodness for parents that take a look at the list and go with your gut, because over 100 talks, what speaks to you? You need to work on mindset a little bit? Maybe you need to work on money. Maybe you need to work on communication. Whatever you feel that you want to grow a little bit more in, there'll be something for you to come see. So I hope you will come join us on Monday. And then Cheyenne and I will be back here next week to talk a little bit more about money. And I'll get a little bit more coaching. I can't wait because I need the help.
Well, sounds fantastic. Great event for people to join in on. It's all about leading first, like lead yourself and then show your kids how it's done and then let them experiment. Have
Yes.
fun with it. Fail, fall down. You don't tell them you're not a walker because they fell down 1,000 times when they were learning to walk, right? So why do that with the rest of their life? Let them play.
So mamas, papas out there, you start taking the actions first. Just as Cheyenne was saying with her son, like she's like, well, look at what I've done, and what do you see, and what do you want to? Because we want them to be happy, healthy adults. We have to model that. We have to role model that for them. And so let's do that and start taking the actions, and then they can say, oh, well, you've been doing that, so then maybe I'm inspired to do the same thing, or at least giving them options and stuff. But we cannot expect them to be happy, healthy adults if we're not going after our own passions.
Okay.
And I think next time we get to mindset, we'll be talking a little bit more about passions and purpose and how do we find that. And so that'll be in 2 weeks. We're going to write that down right now because we started talking about that earlier and then we didn't finish. So we're going to
Right.
continue on that.
Absolutely.
Passions and purpose. Let's get there.
Sounds great. Well, you guys have a wonderful rest of your day wherever you're at. And I hope you've gotten a few gold nuggets to help you out on your day with your family. And take care.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.